I did my undergrad in industrial economics, which is obviously
Classic, classic degree.
I want to make money, or it's just every boy does something to do with business.
Yeah, well, economics, mate. So, do you know what I mean?
But I hated it, and I was at uni, and I was like, what am I gonna do? And then I had my struggles at uni. That was when my anxiety got really bad.
Yeah.
And then through that, I was like, you know, I was going to therapy, and I was like, this would be an amazing job. Like, it's so fulfilling.
Yeah.
And then I found that like I was able to sort of articulate how I was feeling really well. So I thought I might be well suited. So yeah, at the moment I'm on a gap year, and then next year
Are you travelling at all?
Well, because of COVID, it's kind of tricky.
Yeah.
Which is annoying. But this year I'm sort of just sorting myself out. Yeah.
Yeah, mate. And I think that's completely fine. I just think there's this automatic rush. I'm kind of at that stage now because obviously I have I have 5 more months until I finish my year at university. And then, I kind of find that there's this initial pressure to kind of just throw yourself into the workforce and earn as much money as possible. And, if you value that kind of corporate lifestyle, that's fine. Like, that's okay. But like, it doesn't need to be for everyone. And it's something that I've gradually understood, if that made sense.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like we all have a path, and eventually we'll find what that path is. And there isn't like this rush to kind of, I guess in a way it's because there is like time is finite in a sense. And like, I do think about it and do I want to, like with the time I have, how do you kind of spend each day? But then it's like a little conflict I have, it's okay if you want to take a year out, if you want to take 3 years out to figure yourself out, like who other than like it's your life, like but I just feel like I don't know, this could just be myself, but I think also social media has enhanced that sense of like comparison.
100%.
Like just like looking at what's going on in everyone else's life.
Well, yeah, especially if you're in a period where you don't really know where you're going. And you don't have like a clear aim. Obviously, there's a set path, and I think, particularly in London, it's sort of like you're at school, and then you're sixth form.
Yeah.
Everyone's going to uni, so I have to go to uni, and then it's like, okay. I mean, from my experience, a lot of people then go into the city, and it's like, oh, that's the pathway, or I'm going to go to a corporate job, and not many people stop and think, hold on, like, am I just doing this because everyone else is doing it, or am I doing it because I want to do it?
Yeah.
And, because people, for the most part, want to fit in, which is why, like, social media is, like, kind of so toxic. But, yeah, I think I took a gap year before uni.
Okay.
And I needed it because, I actually wanted to sit back and be like, do I actually want to go to uni? Is this something that I want to do? And it was a really good choice. So I agree. There's nothing wrong with sort of taking a step back and being like, okay.
Yeah, I also think like kind of taking that year out, like what you just did prior to uni, it's almost like, because especially London living and, the 21st century, everything moves at an incredible pace. And almost we don't have the time to just sit back and actually evaluate, do I want this? Do I like, it would be very easy to just fall into a career and then kind of, stick at that job, and without really kind of rationalizing, is this something I want to do? And it's not just specifically related to jobs, it could be related to just life in general. And I think, sometimes we just need that sense of like almost to put us into reality and take a step back and look at it from a different perspective. And that, what I'm kind of getting onto is, they're ultimately like, I don't know if you find this. I do put this sense of pressure. I've always had like this pressure to succeed, this pressure to be successful. However, when I actually think about it, I'm putting this on my head is actually devaluing what that success means. Like for me, success is like happiness, and what I perceive as happiness and what I enjoy and what makes me feel complete. When I'm putting, this pressure on, it could be football, it could be, to I don't know, whatever area of my life, it kind of devalues why I do it. I don't know if that's something that aspect of pressure is something you relate to, but something that is quite, present.
Present in your life. Well, I mean, obviously it depends how you define success.
Yeah.
Like you said, if you want to be happy, or, for most people, success is having a really good job. So I don't know, like most people's perception of success is money or like fame.
Yeah.
And I know from my experience that, like, and you hear so many celebrities talk about it, that's not the key, that's not the answer. If you're always striving for more money and more money, it's kind of a trap. But I think as I would say, happiness like is kind of.
Would you say, do you strive for happiness?
I don't strive for happiness.
Yeah.
Because like any feeling, it's fleeting.
Yeah.
And I think it can kind of become like hedonistic in a way, because you're kind of like, you can chase it.
Yeah.
But I think looking for fulfillment and meaning in what I do, and looking for, I think, joy, because joy is is something that you can tap into always, and it's to do with perspective.
Yeah.
Your podcast is about grief and sort of putting things into perspective in that sense. Like I've got parents as well, and I know, I'm well aware that eventually they won't be here one day. So I use this example with my friends. If I'm out, sometimes you probably don't feel this, but most people do, where their parents will ask them on a Saturday, do you want to go out for dinner?
Yeah.
And they've got their friends who want to go out and go drinking and stuff. I always remind myself that one day my dad won't be here.
Yeah.
And that really incentivizes me to go and spend time with him.
Yeah.
So, and I can by looking at through that lens, I can then get joy out of things. Or if you're playing football, or if you're healthy, if I'm just sitting here healthy and I've got no issues going on, I can be really thankful for that. I think the main thing for me is just perspective and finding the beauty in the small things.
Yeah, I think that is, very well put. I think that aspect of the family life is something I've obviously grown to appreciate with not just what I've experienced, but also I think in a way it's kind of not tinted, but it's put like this, these glasses over what actually matters in my life. Going out and drinking, yes, that might be, you might have a great fun evening, and that's all well and good. However, like you said, the time you have with people on this planet, it's not indefinite, and sometimes for me there is like I do put this kind of weight on, not weight, I put this sense of importance on family, and I think there's definitely a massive appreciation I have for going out to eat with the family, or just that sense of closeness. And I think it's really kind of made me the person I am. And I know, my dad's a massive family man, and so was mum, and that's I don't know, it's almost like I do get that pleasure, and it's like that sense of enjoyment, and spending time with people who, I'm going on a tangent, but I think it's
well, not really. It's true. Yeah.
It's like this perspective almost, that like the little things and the small aspects of life, having that sense of appreciation really kind of makes life what it is, in the sense that like sometimes I find myself, could be if I'm feeling particularly down, or I don't know, if I'm anxious. In the past, I would kind of go on walks, and sometimes I would find myself on these walks just kind of looking around, and just it's an odd perspective, but I would almost just look at the sky, and I'd look at the trees and things like that, and it just by noticing and paying attention to these objects, I'm almost kind of like, wow, I'm actually present, I'm alive, what I experience, it doesn't go away, and that anxiety it doesn't dissipate because of what I've noticed, but it just kind of grounds me in reality, and what is actually important, and it kind of not alters the meaning of what's important, but things that I may necessarily concern myself with, i.e. Getting a first on this bit of coursework. Yes, that at the time may have some meaning towards me. But in the grand scheme of things, whether or not I get a first, I get a 2-1, you know, even if I get 2-2, that's not like that's not going to differentiate my life plan. It will, you know, things will change, and that's okay. You don't need to be so rigid and stick to kind of one sense of one path. But yeah, I do actually want to chat a bit about your experience with anxiety. And you know, I remember you saying in the first conversation we had, was this something you noticed whilst you were at uni, or was this something you always kind of were aware of?
Yeah, well, I think it became a big issue when I was at uni, but obviously you look back at your life when it sort of gets bad, and looking back now, I've had an anxiety disorder since I was about 9.
Okay.
That's the first time I can remember it sort of flaring up. But what happened was I sort of went to uni. I was in first year, and I sort of always stayed away from drugs just because of from my advice from my dad, sort of just stay clear of it really. Like I drank, but stayed away from drugs. And I don't know, just one day I just said to my mates I just wanted to try like weed really for the first time.
Yeah.
And long story short, I won't bore you with the story, but I had a terrible experience.
Okay.
And it was really, really bad. And I basically had my first panic attack.
Yeah.
Most people it's quite common for people to get paranoid and then think that they're like dying because of they're having a heart attack or something. But mine was more like paranoia kind of thing. And I just put it down to the experience. And then 2 weeks later, I was around one of my friends' houses, and I just had a panic attack again. But I didn't know what a panic attack was, so I thought like I was high. Okay. I thought I was high, even though I hadn't smoked. So I was like, what is this? What is happening?
Yeah. And so what would kind of enhance, what brought on that?
So essentially what happened is that when I was smoking, I sort of go on to why this makes sense, but I smoked, and then I was getting really paranoid. And I don't know if do you watch Black Mirror?
I have seen it, yes.
So
cool.
Did you watch Bandersnatch?
Yes.
So I thought
that was very an odd watch in general.
Yeah, it was a weird, and when I watched it, it was absolutely fine. But when I smoked, I actually thought I was in it.
No.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was like a really weird, like, oops, sorry.
It's all right, mate.
Sound man's gonna punch me when he comes
now.
out.
Yeah, he's inside.
Yeah. So I thought I was in Bandersnatch, and I was getting really, really paranoid. I thought my friends were lying to me, like it was really weird. And then I was getting like these philosophical questions in my head about like reality, like about afterlife and stuff like that, and like things that I'd thought about a bit but not really in depth. So I was getting like bombarded with all these questions, like, oh my god. And then I actually was watching Black Mirror around my friends, so it basically caused me to have a panic attack because I started to ruminate about it.
And
I was like, oh my god, I didn't know what was going on. Obviously, like I said, I thought I was high without smoking weed, which is impossible. And then I thought, okay, this is pretty bad. I went to my friend and spoke about philosophical stuff for a bit, but that didn't help. And then I went.
Never really helps, mate.
No, well, no, it doesn't. And then I went to my dad and said, like, I'm not feeling. I was really bad.
Okay.
My anxiety was just getting worse and worse. It had never been this bad. And then I phoned up the uni just to try and see someone to figure out what was going on. And to be honest, they were quite useless.
See, I found that as well, mate.
Yeah, I mean, it's shocking. I can't remember how long they said, but it was nearly 2 months wait.
Okay.
And I was like, I need tapping.
Yeah, come on, mate.
Yeah. I'm getting it going now. So the uni was a shambles, and luckily for me, because my dad was able to afford private, so I went and saw someone privately. And at that point, I thought it was to do with my parents divorced, and the reason I said I started getting anxiety when I was 9 was because I think that was the first time it flared up. But it's always flared up when there's high levels of stress.
Of course.
But it might not be causally related to when my parents divorced.
Yes.
So there's an analogy that where like you have like a stress cup.
Okay.
And when your stress cup overflows, you sort of break out at your weakest point. And for me, that's OCD. Like,
Okay.
So that's why I have OCD. And I didn't actually know that. So I was seeing this lady for anxiety, and she did psychodynamics. So she was focusing on like my relationship with my parents.
Yes, of course.
Which, you know, for some people is great, but for me, when you have like OCD, there's a set therapy you need to go through in order to get better, and it was just actually making me worse.
Yeah.
So I was doing my own reading, and I found some stuff that helped, and I managed to kind of get myself back. Like I was okay for quite a while, and then the pandemic happened, and I was sort of all right. And then it got to 2020 November time, and it literally just came out of the blue. Just got really bad again, the worst I'd ever been. And I think it was I think for everyone, mental health obviously got worse because of the pandemic, because there's more time to think. And when you have more time to think, thinking's dangerous. You know, you don't want to be in your head for too long, especially if you're predisposed to anxiety or depression. So it just got really bad, and I started seeing this lady again, even though I'd stopped. And I think I had like three or four sessions like in 1 week, because I was so bad, and everything she was saying it would be okay for the session, then I'd just get bad again. So I was like, she's not right.
And you know, the thing with that is, I've kind of been there, and it's almost like you feel you need that sense of therapy to be okay, where it's like almost you put your welfare, you know. One thing I found with my experience with mental health is I have to do it myself, in the sense that, you know, I can't, you know, all this help from therapy, and I have somewhat a positive relationship with therapy, but it ultimately, a lot of my the experiences and a lot of the benefits I've experienced are when, you know, I've done my own research and kind of tailored it towards, because it's not one size fits all. You know, what works for you will definitely not work for someone else. Like, you know, there's obviously guidelines that, you know, people follow. However, for you, for your recovery, there might be something that you specifically need. And I've always found that when I'm like kind of thinking a little bit outside the box, and not outside the box, but having that sense of perspective, and okay, yes, cognitive behavioral therapy is working. However, what else can I add? What can I, you know, also enhance? Like, I guess it's training. Like, you're training your mental muscles. Like,
yeah, of course.
And
you want sort of like a holistic approach.
Yeah.
You don't just want therapy and then that's it.
Yeah.
You know, and I think therapy is amazing, which is why I'm going to go into it.
Yes.
But if you've got, I want to go and treat anxiety disorders. And if you've got an anxiety disorder, or depression's a tough one, because you can have an anxiety disorder and depression, or you can just have depression, or you can have bipolar and stuff like that. So it's complicated. But with an anxiety disorder, there's a very structured way of dealing with therapy, and it is really, really effective. But, you know, with I don't know, you obviously went to therapy because of grief and
I guess looking at it now, like, you definitely, but however, I've always kind of been in and out throughout. I never associated it with what I was going through with mum. However, that was definitely the stimulus, you know. She was diagnosed when I was 8, and very much that was probably what manifested my anxiety, and throughout school there was definitely that was, you know, the cause. I never kind of connected the dots or associated my anxiety with what was going on, you know, until later on, until, like, you know, in fact, until now, like, until I've started doing this and really been going through. But yeah, I guess the therapy that necessarily I've had now is more tailored towards grief. But yeah.
And are you going and seeing someone for CBT, or is it how do you go about getting therapy for grief?
So, well, actually, the charity Grief Encounter, shout out. No, but yeah, no. So it's a charity that I actually work with, but they basically just help people, young people going through grief, and I did have, you know, some therapy for that. However, it was going through that during a pandemic and having therapy over Zoom is a bit conflicting, because although they are somewhat present, there is like this when you're, and I find it when with these conversations, when you're in person and you can really speak to someone, there's a sense of intimacy. You felt you're heard. Over the internet, it's there's a million thoughts going through my mind. I'm not present in that moment. I could be wiring, like I could be looking at the clock, I could be and yes, I'm listening, but at the same time it's like I'm not digesting. So it was actually, I think the pandemic's had a massive toll on mental health. And even though I was at the time getting because mum passed in October, and then the pandemic happened a couple of months after that, so almost like I didn't have time to fully adjust to my new life. Like it was just thrown onto me, and then we were thrown into a pandemic, and
you were isolated as well.
And how did you find that isolation?
Funnily enough, I was actually okay.
Were you at university?
So until about March.
Okay.
So obviously when it started, everyone went back. I don't know if you were at uni as well.
I took the year out.
Okay, so you took the year out. Everyone sort of left, and everyone was like, "Oh yeah, we'll be back in a couple of weeks, no problem."
3 weeks.
Yeah, 3 weeks. My dad kept telling me that, and I was like, "Yeah, lovely." I didn't want to. I actually got COVID when everyone was sent home.
Yeah,
but I didn't know. So I was okay.
Super spreader, is that?
Yeah. So I was. I actually really enjoyed it because it was sort of the first lockdown it was summer. London there were no cars on the road. Me and my friends would just go out on our bikes, literally, because my dad lives by Tower Bridge, so proper central London, and we'd just go out all day riding bikes and go to the park and stuff and just chill.
Yeah.
I think, and also Warzone got me through the first lockdown, I think, because it was like bike ride throughout the day, so I get my exercise, and then I play Warzone for like 6 hours with my friends after. So a boy's dream.
Yeah.
And then
if you were getting paid for that, it'd be unbelievable.
I know, the job of dreams. But then we got to winter, second lockdown, and I was just saying to him, like I said to one of my friends at uni, because we went back to uni at that point, like this second one's like I can feel it like getting to me, and I think I've always struggled in the winter anyway. I think like with kind of like seasonal affective disorder, but I just felt it, and then that's when in November I got really, really bad, and I came across a guy on Instagram. I did that BBC documentary.
Yes, I was going to touch on that.
Yeah, so that's the reason I went on it, because I had a really bad experience with a guy on Instagram, and like I said, the lady I was seeing wasn't helping, and I was sort of trying to find someone, because that's like when you feel that bad. Like I was really bad. You just want to feel better, and like by any means. So I found this guy on Instagram. He resonated. It kind of resonated with me what he was saying. I felt like he understood me, and he was doing one-to-one calls. But he went under the name of Coach. And for anyone that's listening, that's a red flag.
Okay.
Because you need someone that's trained. Obviously, not every therapist is great, just like any profession. And I've had my fair share of bad ones, but you have to keep going, because eventually you do find the right person. Had a really bad experience with him, and the problem with him was that he said that he was the only one that understood OCD.
Okay.
Which is very dangerous, because if you're not getting better, you think, okay, well, if he's the best and he says he's the best, then, and I'm not getting better, then there's obviously something wrong with me.
Yeah.
But turns out, obviously, it was him, and I worked that one out.
But a lot of people don't in that situation.
Well, yeah, and I think probably because of my upbringing, my dad's like quite a wise guy, and he always had he has this phrase. I said it on the documentary: "If it's too good to be true, it's too good to be true."
Yeah,
and it's true.
Yeah,
because he was promising the world, and it was kind of set up like a cult. Like actually was. He's very narcissistic, and so I always say to people, if you're gonna get therapy, go through the right means. Don't go straight to Instagram, because there's a lot of rubbish on Instagram. You know, these like inspirational quotes are great, but That
you see a geezer in a Ferrari, and you know it's quoted like,
oh well,
if you want to get there, follow my page. Like,
I don't, not even that. That's way worse.
That,
you know, the Forex traders where they go to Dubai for 2 weeks and rent a Ferrari. That's great, mate. You know, no, I don't want to get involved with your business.
I'm sure you're having a great life, mate.
Yeah.
How much do you pay for that?
So, but I mean, just like there's like online, even some therapy pages are just there's so much fluff.
And I guess you would assume that because you see a social following and that kind of resonates with you. Like, okay, well, if they have an audience of this size, they must know what they're talking about. However, there's an algorithm, and if you're very in tune with social media, you know how to play that algorithm. And what that means is you might be chatting absolute, shit. However, if you put a nice little picture with like, a little quote or something like that, something like that will get shared around, and then that brings in an audience, and then automatically people are like, okay, well, this guy must know what he's on about. But that's not the case.
No, of course not. And you don't really think about that when you're
need
struggling.
Help.
Exactly. You're almost too trusting.
Yeah.
And I think that's how I was. You know, you want to believe that they're the real deal so that you can get better. So yeah, I was too trusting. It happened, and I was non-functional really. And
when you say that, what does that mean for you?
That means not being able to, do the necessary things to keep me healthy. So like, not being able to cook for myself.
Yeah.
Not really wanting to leave even my bed.
Yeah.
Because of how bad, I was just so stuck in my head, and I didn't feel like there was.
I think it's amazing because I've been in that situation, and I almost describe it. I feel almost like a zombie. I feel like I don't feel alive. I just feel like I'm going through the motions of life. Like,
you're alive, but you're not living.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, my body is just like a vehicle, but I don't. There is like, my emotions are very numb. I'm numb to kind of all experiences. So I think, and in that position, I don't think people understand how difficult it is to get out.
No, because.
But what I'm saying is the fact that you even managed to work in a COVID centre as you like that's remarkable.
Well, actually, it's probably the best thing for someone.
The best thing, yes,
because it gets you out of your head.
Yeah,
you have to break that cycle. Otherwise, there isn't much hope. You have to, whether it's you or your parents snapping you out of it and being like, you need to go to work.
Yeah.
Even if you don't make it, you've got to try. If you go and you have to come back after half a day, that's okay. But you've actually gone and tried. You have to work yourself out of these bad habits, because in a sense it is a bad habit. Obviously it's a bit more complicated than that.
Well, I find it a comfort. I find it's like a sense. It's easy. It's
easy.
It's easy to feel that, to feel down, to really get out of that feeling. It's almost like I don't know, comfort. I don't know if it's the right terminology, but it's like I don't want to feel this way. However, to change, I keep saying however, but the way I'm set, I don't know. But
it's just I think it's just exhausting.
Exhausting,
that you have to.
Yeah.
And I kind of started on the point, but didn't actually go to finish it.
Until I rudely
No,
interrupted
it wasn't
you.
even you.
I
just sort of, it spirals and you start speaking about something else.
Yeah.
But when I speak to my friends who don't have pretty good mental health, and by the way, people who've never suffered with anxiety or depression or grief, it doesn't mean that you've got the keys and you're doing everything right. No. People have predispositions, and some people might have, a chemical imbalance, or mental health can be brought on by life situations like you've experienced. So they won't be able to relate to when you're in bed and you can't get out of bed, or you don't have enough energy to go, or you don't feel like you can go and make yourself food, even if it is a bowl of cereal, or you don't want to leave the house. If I felt like a kid when I was that bad, because I was so dependent on my mum. Like, it was really, really bad. And I'm so lucky that I have that, because some people don't. And when you get in that position, you don't have family and friends. Like you're
isolate yourself.
Yeah. So and my dad's brilliant at that as well, because he snaps me out of it.
Yeah.
It's like that. He gives me the tough love, because sometimes you do need that. With me, I don't know if it's the same for you, but sometimes you need someone to go, like, I understand that you're struggling, but this is going to help. So which is why, you need to try and go to work.
I think, there's always a balance. And, I always found Mum gave me that sense of kind of that nurturing love that most women probably do give. And Dad's approach was less from like a mental health perspective and more from like a practical perspective. But combining the two was almost, really effective, essentially, because, I've been there, and, it's almost like, I love taking responsibility, but I'm someone who, I'm quite driven, and I want to, like, it sounds weird, but when I'm in like that mindset, that really anxious mindset, things like, okay, let's say I was picking my sister up from her mates, I'm then thinking, oh God, where am I going to park? How am I going to park? Things that are so, I'm concerning myself with an anxious situation that won't even happen. And I'm getting anxious over a future event, which is then causing me to feel anxious in the present. And then that's like, it's like a continued cycle. And then it's like, thoughts are incredibly powerful. And when you realize they are just thoughts, that is when you can kind of, I don't want to say control it, but you take notice, and then you kind of realize, okay, why am I concerning myself with parking? What is that thought? You just notice it as a thought, and then, life is, you kind of accept it for what it is. But when you are in that dark place, and, for people who have been there, they know the difficulty, the tasks that would seemingly be unquestionably easy become, it's like a mountain. It's like climbing Everest to even, make steel, let alone see a friend. It's baffling. And then I don't know if you find this, but I found that almost there was a sense of, one day I could be I could have all these feelings. And I think there is, now I'm kind of relating it a lot more to alcohol. My relationship with that has kind of changed, whereas for like my first year of uni, I was this, your first year of uni, you're drinking every night because you want to have fun. But I think as you get older, you realise your health is more important than, your mental health is more important than, getting fucked every night, because
it's so true. Well, I think because if you have a mental health condition, I think in general, really, that you go on a bender with your mates. And it's
I
great.
love that word, bender. You got a bender with your mates.
It sounds so messy, isn't it?
Oh, bender, mate. 4-day bender.
Yeah, that's my Essex coming out. But you sort of go out with your friends, and it's all great, and then you wake up with a really bad hangover, and especially if you're an anxious person, that's gonna knock you out for 2 days. So I don't really drink anymore. Because of that, and I just think I can be way more stable and reliable as a person if I might have 1 or 2 drinks, but really I always anyway would only drink to get drunk, because I'd rather have a Diet Coke. Like, I'm a big Diet Coke person. And I wouldn't.
Regular? You don't like regular?
No.
Really?
No. Diet Coke with ice and lemon.
See, I don't like Diet Coke. Like, it just doesn't taste. I like the coldness, the sugar. I mean, you just can't.
It's not sponsored, by the way, by Coke.
Yeah, not as well. It actually is, but no,
no. You just like that one.
No, it's not. But I don't know, mate. Have you never been? Like, I was in Miami this Christmas, and when it's really hot out, and you have a nice Coke in a glass bottle, which is unbelievable.
Yeah.
See, Diet Coke just doesn't have that same effect on me.
Really? But like, have you tried it?
I have tried it.
You tried it?
Yeah, I have tried it, and it's just. I can noticeably taste, to me, like a Diet Coke just tastes like just a bit watery.
I'm going to try and not get offended.
I can see that. This is like rustling your feathers.
I shouldn't have agreed to this.
Yeah. He's going to go home. He's never going to see you again, mate.
Mum, you can't believe what he said. But aside from Diet Coke, sort of just, I'd only drink to get drunk, but now I don't even really do that. Like I might have a couple because I just know it's going to wipe me out, and I'm sensitive to it. And some people can get away with it, but I don't actually think they do. I think that, especially in the city, actually, there's quite a bad culture with drinking, and it does catch up with you. Oh, you're right, Geese.
Yeah, just knock myself out.
Yeah.
Sorry.
But yeah, it's never really been advice for me because my dad's always said stay away from drugs, and I know like your parents saying that's not going to keep you away.
Yeah.
But it did for me. So I never really tapped into those things, and actually I'm quite lucky because I feel like if I hadn't had that advice, then that might have been something I'd rely on.
Yes. I find that interesting because I've also had quite a self-aware relationship with drugs, in the sense that I smoked weed once or twice. It was something that I automatically almost not similar to well, I guess it was like the paranoia that came on from this one experience was truly toxic, and it didn't just once I woke up after this night, it's the feeling stayed with me for a few days after. And that wasn't like, I'm someone, I always, there might be a chemical imbalance that I experience, and I kind of don't want to alter that too much, if experiencing, having like a sense of mental health, and drinking or getting involved with drugs can be quite, it is a kind of a toxic remedy. Like, it's not even a remedy, it's just like from my experience, it's always like, even drinking per se, there's been, I'm very good at kind of being in control. I don't like to, I know, if I have this, I'm going to be okay.
Yeah.
The moment that drinking kind of, I also find, I guess you're also a lot more vulnerable, when you drink. And I've definitely found that I'm a lot more emotional. I'm quite an emotional drunk, which, if you're with me on a night out, I'm very sorry. But it's something where those emotions definitely cause like a sense of huge anxiety that I will experience for the next 3-4 days after I've...
Yeah.
And it's just, I don't enjoy it. It's for me, it's not worth it. I think my mental health is precious, and I kind of want to look after it. And, I've done a very good job at maintaining a sense of I don't know, good stability. Yeah. And to kind of drink and associate with kind of substances, I feel like, just kind of crushes that stability.
Yeah.
So, which is, I guess, why I've avoided that sense of drugs. However, what I was going to ask is, so your experience with OCD, you said, so what does that entail? That's very bizarre, because that was the word that I was about to...
I knew I could see it in
your eyes.
I
could see, you read it in my mind.
So what it entails, the easiest way to explain OCD is, well, first of all, it's not what everyone thinks. So I'm not this neat freak who likes things in an orderly fashion. That's not OCD at all.
Okay.
I wish it was, but it's not. So it's in the name. So it's OCD is obsessive compulsive disorder. So you have obsessions, which can come in many forms. Mine is there's names for themes. So my theme is like existential OCD, which is mainly philosophical stuff.
Okay.
It's associated with questions about life that can't be answered, which is perfect for OCD because there's no answer.
Yeah.
I'm talking about like the meaning of life.
Yes.
Because that's the subjective question.
Yeah.
Is there an afterlife? Stuff like that. Free will. So it surrounds those questions, but OCD can come in many forms. So people have harm OCD, or they'll have... I mean, most people will have intrusive thoughts that OCD people have, but they won't attach as much meaning to them. So I give the example of, so this may sound like weird to the listeners, but I always say to people, have you ever been on the underground and you're standing by the platform and you get an intrusive thought about, as the train's approaching, like about like seeing an image of you like jumping in front of the train?
Yeah.
People go, what the fuck? Like, no, I'm not suicidal. That's not what I mean.
Yeah.
It's having an intrusive thought, which is a stupid thought that comes into your head about jumping in front of a train, which you won't do. It's not like, I'm suicidal, I want to jump in front of a train. It's not that. It's having that thought, but then some people will have that thought and attach meaning and go, does that mean I want to do it?
Yeah.
And then so what they'll do is, so that's actually called suicidal OCD. So it's people who are not suicidal, but are so scared that they're going to do something to themselves that they then put in measures to prevent them from doing it.
Okay.
So then they basically, those are called compulsions.
Yes.
So they then retreat basically to their room so they can't do anything to themselves. Or harm OCD is when you think that when you get intrusive thoughts about harming others. Especially OCD will target the things that you value the most. So if you have harm OCD, you're scared of harming your relatives. So you might be in the kitchen cutting onions and you'll get an intrusive thought, which is an unwanted thought.
Yes.
About stabbing your mum.
Yeah.
You don't want to do it, but because your OCD misinterprets that as a danger, you then do compulsions to prevent yourself in the worst case scenario of doing it. So what people do in that scenario would put the knife down, lock the knives away, or then even like worst cases retreat to their room. And like, okay, a final example is people have contamination, which is like a most commonly known one, which is like fear of disease or germs.
Yeah.
So, which is like the common like washing the hands thing. So they'll, I've only had existential really, so I've never had any of these themes, but they are really common, especially contamination. So someone with contamination will be so afraid of germs they wouldn't be able to open a door because it'd have too many germs on the handle. Or they do the hand washing thing and they'll finish washing their hands and intrusive thoughts will come and go, there's a bit of dirt underneath your fingernail. You need to get that, otherwise that could be deadly. Obviously it's not. But because there's a feeling of anxiety and urgency, people feel compelled to do it.
Yes.
And they know it's irrational, but because they keep doing these compulsions, and the compulsions are there to remove the anxiety. That's what a lot of mental health conditions are kind of all about. It's an uncomfortable feeling.
Yeah.
And they do compulsions to relieve the feeling. So, I mean, you see that with people who are depressed. They turn to sort of drugs to relieve that depression, or at least ease it. So the cycle is you get like an intrusive thought, an unwanted thought. You then you get a discomfort, or an uncomfortable feeling, whether that's anxiety, depression. It may just be a feeling that you can't describe.
Yeah. And
then you do a compulsion, which could be in your head, or it could be a physical compulsion, where a physical compulsion is washing your hands.
Yes.
But a mental compulsion could be like arguing with the thought. Because actually, if you say to yourself, okay, I'm in the kitchen, I'm cutting onions with a knife.
I'm cutting knives?
Yeah, I'm cutting knives.
How'd you do that?
Nah. I'm cutting an onion. OCD goes, you could kill your mum with this, you know?
Yeah.
And then you argue with it. No, I wouldn't do anything like that. That's actually a compulsion. So with OCD, there's a lot of stuff that you do in your head that actually keeps the cycle going.
Okay.
So that cycle goes from, you get intrusive thought, discomfort, you do a compulsion, and then you get temporary relief. Problem is, you only get temporary relief.
Yeah.
So the whole point of therapy is to break the cycle.
Yeah.
So you, at the start, which is why I'll speak to you about mindfulness as well, like kind of meditation, because I don't know if you've ever done stuff like that. But you start by not engaging with, so you'll get the discomfort, and then you stop doing the compulsions. And then actually, you do what's considered anti-OCD. So you do the opposite. So I keep going back to the knife thing.
Yeah.
I'm obsessed.
Yeah.
But
do I need to check your pockets?
Yeah. I love knives. But if you're in the kitchen and that happens, instead of putting the knife down, you keep cutting the onion because you need to teach your brain that it's nothing.
It's okay.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Like, you're not going to do that. But the minute that you put the knife down, you're telling your brain that there's something to be worried about. So it's mainly the OCD consists of that cycle, and that's all it is, and that's why it can manifest in many forms, whether it's contamination, existential for me, because with mine, there's
so I was going to say, how does that link towards the other forms of the other? Well, what compulsions kind of come from your existential thoughts?
So a main, it's all mental really, but actually there's physical. So Googling is a physical. So it's considered a physical compulsion because when you're Googling, you're trying to find out an answer.
Okay.
But it's an unanswerable question. These are questions that no one's been able to answer, which is why they're philosophical.
Yeah.
Or they haven't come to a conclusive answer. Obviously, there's theories and whatnot. But so it would be mental rumination, going over this question, trying to come to a conclusion.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's too complicated to go into in detail, but that's what you would do. I do a lot of mental compulsing, which I didn't even know I was doing. I didn't know that it was an issue, because if it's not, the problem is with OCD you think, oh, it's all physical, like I'm washing my hands.
Yeah.
But when you go to therapy, you realize, and that's why I want to create awareness, because people don't even a lot of people don't even realize they have OCD. It's just anxiety, which is an umbrella term.
Yes.
So with existential, that's kind of, I did a lot of Googling, a lot of ruminating, and it can become, when you're thinking about existence all day, every day, it becomes pretty depressing.
Yeah.
So that's why the depression hits, and I'm happy to say I'm in a good place now.
Yeah.
But before I got the right therapy, I wasn't. So
yeah.
And I was just going to touch on the kind of mindfulness meditation stuff, because I think it's quite important. You did actually say something, which was when you were talking about sometimes you'd get overwhelmed when you were feeling shit, and you use the example of going to pick your sister up and that being really overwhelming, and sort of it comes back to that analogy of the cup overflowing.
Yeah.
When that overflows, these little things just become so massive.
Yeah.
But you said so you spoke about like rationalizing, but I think a big thing for me when I was in therapy and just over my journey of learning about mental health is mindfulness has been like massive, because, and it's really hard to explain to people. I mean, mindfulness and meditation are kind of like two sides of the same coin, but when I say mindfulness, it's sort of having the awareness that you're not your thoughts.
Yes.
And by creating that separation, because most people are really fused with their thoughts. They think that their thoughts are them, which is the whole problem with OCD, is because they think they have bad thoughts, that they're a bad person. But having that realization is massive, because you can actually disengage from all that chatter in your head, which is massive, and it's a massive relief for people who ruminate a lot, which I think is so important. It's an important skill that people should learn if they suffer with mental health, because you can choose to either focus your intention internally in your head on the distressing thoughts or bad or negative thoughts, or you can redirect your attention to something you love or something you find meaningful or something productive. So
I think it's important, that whole aspect of having a sense of awareness over your thoughts, and thoughts don't determine who you are. They're just, we have countless thoughts on a daily basis. They enter our mind, and when you just, you become aware, that something I've learned to accept that is when you kind of notice them, and I read a book. It was actually recommended by someone who's on here, and I can't remember the book for the life of me. No, I can. It's going to really annoy me. It's going to come to me like in 2 days in the shower. But one of the techniques in this book that was used is, when you have a thought, you then sing that thought in the tune of Happy Birthday. so the example he gave was like, I'm a real piece of shit. I'm a real piece of shit.
It's quite cool.
Yeah, and it's just like when a thought like that enters my mind, it's almost taking the power away. You know, you kind of realize like, you know, I'm not like, and it's hard to, you know, you assume because it's in your mind, it must be true.
Yeah.
But when you take that power away and you kind of, you know, I guess there's mindfulness it's under a different bracket in the sense of like, well, it's a different technique, but you know, taking power. But ultimately, what they all do is they take power away from thoughts that try to dictate your life.
Yeah.
You know, and they really do. They can do.
Yeah.
And it's so important to, and I guess it's I guess the sense of, you know, I was fortunate enough to have private healthcare as well, but to realize, you know, we don't know enough about how to help what we're experiencing. You know, these thoughts, there isn't enough true understanding. And once you become aware and you realize, like one thing you mentioned is you do a lot of reading, and that's something, you know, I found myself doing a lot as well, a lot of reading, and I guess it was about tailoring what I read the from the literature to kind of connect to myself and find out how to help what I'm experiencing, if that makes sense.
In terms of, were you reading about grief and then trying to apply it to your life?
Yeah, so it wouldn't necessarily just be grief. It could just be, there was a book, again, out my mind, but...
Some book.
Yeah, it's some book by some author, and something that they would have written would have resonated with me, and then I would it would put what I'm experiencing, my experiences, into somewhat a perspective. Yeah. And I guess it comes back to that sense of, you know, therapy and combining different taking a more holistic approach to recovery. I don't really know where I was going with this thought, but it's just like, well, I guess that stemmed from your whole kind of mindfulness conversation. But yeah, that is something that I have found to be particularly beneficial. I think a lot of people who have tried mindfulness, once you really kind of understand what it is, have found the benefits.
Well, I find that most people who have tried, especially meditation, don't understand it because they're not patient enough.
Yeah.
You know, I speak to my friends about it quite a lot. I try to encourage them to do it as a practice, and they go, "Yeah, well, I've tried and I'm shit at it."
Yeah.
I'm like, but you know, when you tried football for the first time, you were shit at it.
Yeah.
You're not going to suddenly become a monk.
Yeah.
Because you turned on Headspace and tried the first meditation.
Yeah.
Like, that's not how it works. You have to practice.
It doesn't work like that.
I'm sorry to say it. Yeah, meditation debunked. But that's not how it works.
No,
you have to. It's the same as going to the gym.
Yeah.
You are training a muscle. You're training your ability to disengage from your thinking, and then you reap the benefits of that, whether that's like increased focus. And I'm not like a monk. I don't meditate every single day, but learning the skill of being able to disengage really helped, and being able to divert my attention. So if I catch myself in my anxious thinking, I'm able to realize I'm actually in my anxious thinking, and then go, oh, okay, I'm gonna go back to what I was doing.
Yeah,
I'm distracted.
It's just noticing. It's just becoming aware that these thoughts aren't the be it or end all. They're thoughts, and you know, putting that into perspective. It takes a lot of training. It's not something you can automatically, you know, automatically resonate with yourself. But once you become aware, I don't want to say life becomes manageable, because it just becomes another technique. It's like another tool that you have to kind of really deal with the troubles that you face.
Yeah.
You know?
I was going to say coping strategy, but it's a tool where you're able to manage your mental health in a better way.
Plain and simple, yeah.
Pretty much, because it doesn't, you know, you don't go to therapy and I think I probably had this misconception as well that when you go to therapy, you're done with therapy and
you come
every
out,
day is a good day.
Hey. But also, can I touch on that? Like, every day doesn't need to be a good day. What, like, there is this view that, I guess, happiness, we need to feel happy all the time, and we need to strive for that sense of just enjoyment. But there's a book literally right in front of me, and it says it's okay that you're not okay, and sometimes just being content, like, you don't need to strive for like every day to be this amazing, wonderful experience, because life isn't like that.
No, it's got ups and downs, but it wouldn't make sense if every day was a good day.
Yeah.
Because then there would be no bad days.
Well, then you'd have no appreciation for when something is like, if every day was a good day, when you get an amazing result, or you have an amazing, then there would be
it will become normal.
Yeah. So you would be normalized to that. And so everything would just be on that level. And that would also, like, it kind of devalues when you do experience something amazing, because you're like, wow, this is incredible.
Yeah. Well, actually, even coming back to this podcast, like so much good comes out of bad things that happen. Yeah. And
well, pain and art, they kind of,
coincide.
Coincide. There's some sense of
Yeah, but it's horrible that we've had to go through things that are not particularly nice, but you've created this platform, which is, I think, amazing, and it's a safe place for people who are going through that experience, and it's, especially when you're young, it's not so common to go through grief in that form. So it's important, and I think it's important that people do stuff like this and are vulnerable, just to show people that it's okay. But you wouldn't have been in this position if something bad didn't happen.
Of course.
And likewise, I wouldn't have gone into. I wouldn't have wanted to become a therapist if I hadn't had this experience. And actually, it's given me a greater depth into life and understanding of how life works.
I agree. I just think you have a better understanding. If you learn from your experience and you put that practice into your daily life, and if you don't learn from what you've gone through, you'd be making the same mistakes day after day. Or I say mistakes, but if I hadn't learned about how to deal with my grief and deal with my perspective on life, I would still be in this pit of wallow, and I wouldn't. But you learn to and once you put that into practice, life becomes. You can hear my dog just like tapping, tiptoeing outside. Bit of jazz hands, mate. Yeah. Sorry, Emery.
It runs in the family.
Yeah, she does. She's nuts, mate. But yeah, it's just like if you learn about what you're experiencing and put that into practice, it's important. But this has been a fantastic chat. Really, really enjoyed it. But I'm gonna wrap this up. However, I don't know why I keep doing that. I keep saying, however, I'm going to count at the end. I probably said like...
However, count at the top right.
However, 75 at the minute. But yeah, so if you were to if there was someone experiencing, OCD and, didn't know it was OCD, or like were having these kind of thoughts, what was it you'd kind of say to them? Like, how would you tell them, what
advice would I give them? Where would I tell them to get help? Stuff like that. Well, it's a tough one because most people don't realise they have it, which was the trouble that I went through. But assuming they know they have it, it's easier for me to direct them.
Okay.
Stay away from Instagram gurus and coaches. Bad news. I would say contact the main OCD charities. So there's OCD Action, which is in the UK, and OCD UK as well. They're brilliant. You can phone them up and they can direct you to the right people. But the NHS are pretty good if you know that you have OCD. It's easier when you have a diagnosed problem.
Yeah.
And then they can sort of direct you because the NHS therapists are generally quite good. But I would say go to them and kind of. Obviously, there's resources on Instagram, but those are the best resources. And yeah, just just kind of stay away from Instagram. And
that's a big no-no.
Yeah, that would be.
That's
going to
be the caption of this video. Stay away from Instagram.
Yeah. Well, actually, the guy, we just got his Instagram removed.
Oh wow, really?
Yeah. So he went from about 40,000 followers to he's on 800 now. Bless him.
Oh, bless him. What
Bless
a cute
him.
little
Shout
number.
out to Rob Bray. But yeah, just stick to those charities. But I don't discourage people from therapy, because I think it can be, it can transform people's lives.
Yeah.
But you've got to want to help yourself.
Yes.
You can't go there and expect them to fix you. You've got to do the work.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Thank you so much, mate. It's been
amazing.
Pleasure. Oh, and that's what we call a wrap.
Yeah. Done deal.
Yeah, done deal.
I just want you to find your truth and stick to it. I know you'll be okay. I know it. From the bottom of my heart, I know it. I love you, Papa.